Before the blood moon rose, before the curse was written in fire and bone, there was a story whispered only in the wind, a story of love so fierce it could unmake the heavens, and hearts bound so deep even death could not tear them apart. Welcome, wanderer, to Once Upon a Tube, where legends breathe and love walks the edge of ruin. If you find yourself lost in the shadows, remember to like, subscribe, and stay, for this tale is only beginning. Now, listen close. For under the pale light of a dying moon, fate began to stir. The ruins of Moonspire Temple stood like bones under the pale moonlight, silent witnesses to 1,000 forgotten prayers. Marble columns cracked and wept with vines, and the wind carried the scent of rain and ash. Somewhere within the shattered altar hall, an old oracle lay dying. Her body trembled as she reached toward the light that slipped through the broken dome, a single beam falling upon her silvered eyes. The blood on her lips shimmered like starlight. "They come again," she whispered to no one. "Shadow and flame, the devourer and the light-bearer, shall love and end the world." Her voice echoed once, twice, then died, swallowed by the hollow breath of the temple. And far away, beneath the dark spires of Dravenmere Keep, a man awoke in agony. Kane. The name alone was enough to make the air thicken. The Devourer King, carved by fate, cursed by gods, ruler of beasts who stalked the moonlit wilds. He sat upright on the edge of his bed, sweat running down his temple as he gripped his chest. Beneath his skin, something ancient burned, a mark shaped like a crescent moon, pulsing with crimson fire. He could taste iron in his mouth, could hear a heartbeat, not his own. It was soft, rapid, fragile, but it called to him. What sorcery? His breath broke. The fire within him flared brighter, as if his very veins were being rewritten. He staggered to his feet, hands shaking, shadows gathering instinctively around him. Every torch in the room dimmed. The curse he had buried for a century was waking. A voice, faint, melodic, whispered his name through the ether. Kane. He turned sharply, searching the empty air, but it wasn't there. Not really. It was inside him, threaded between his heartbeats, woven into his pulse, and somewhere, across the veil of miles and magic, Lysandra Vale froze in her own bed of moonlight. Her body trembled as though lightning had brushed her skin. The silver veins on her wrists glowed faintly, and her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, her room, filled with soft moonfire, felt like it was breathing. The candles bent toward her, drawn by an unseen rhythm. She pressed a hand to her heart. It wasn't fear she felt. It was recognition. But that was impossible. She had never known anyone like this, never felt such a pull. Her familiar Era stirred beside her, a creature of half mist, half light, eyes glowing pale blue. "Your pulse," Era murmured. "It beats with another." Lysandra swallowed. Another what? Another heart. Outside, the moon bled red for a single moment, a warning, a promise. Back in Dravenmere, Kane stumbled toward the mirror. His reflection flickered in and out, shadow and flame warping together. He had endured pain before, the hunger, the endless nights, the curse that chained him to the darkness. But this was different. It wasn't pain. It was presence. Something, someone, had found its way into him. "Show yourself," he growled. His voice cracked the air, rattling the window panes. The shadows responded, twisting and forming the faint outline of a woman, silver hair, luminous eyes, standing within his mind like a ghost of light. She didn't speak. She only looked at him, and the look was enough to unravel him. Kane staggered back, heart hammering. The air was thick with her scent, moonlight and rain. He could feel her terror, her confusion, her strength. He clenched his jaw, trying to fight the pull, but the more he resisted, the stronger it grew. His beast stirred beneath his skin, whispering in a voice of hunger and longing. She is yours." "No," he snarled, slamming his fist into the stone wall. "I buried that bond 100 years ago." Blood trickled from his knuckles. The curse burned hotter in response, defying him, mocking him. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Lysandra gasped, clutching her wrist. The same crescent mark blazed there, identical to his. Pain seared through her, sharp and beautiful. She saw flashes, crimson eyes, shadows shifting like smoke. A man whose soul was breaking. Her tears came without reason. She had never seen him before. Yet her heart ached like she'd lost him 1,000 times. "Era," she whispered. "What is happening to me?" The spirit creature circled her, voice gentle and grave. "The old magic stirs. The covenant that bound night and light before the first moon was born. It is not a curse of hate. It is a bond of love." "Love?" Lysandra scoffed, though her heart trembled. How could love burn like this? Era's eyes dimmed, because it was never meant for mortals. Lightning split the horizon. A storm gathered over both realms, one drenched in shadow, one cloaked in light. At that exact moment, Kane and Lysandra moved to the same rhythm, one step forward, one heartbeat shared. Neither could see the other, yet the air between them vibrated with connection. It was as if the world itself had chosen to remember what they had both forgotten. Kane fell to his knees, breathing hard. The mark on his chest blazed so bright it painted the room in bloodlight. His fangs lengthened. The beast in him begged for release. But he forced it down, gripping the chain around his neck, a relic from another life. He whispered the name carved into its back, a name he had not spoken since before he became the Devourer. Lysandra. And miles away, under the trembling moon, she whispered back, without knowing why. Kane. The world stilled, their hearts, beating miles apart, aligned in perfect rhythm. Thump, thump. One pulse, two souls, fused by prophecy. The dying oracle's voice echoed across the void, carried by wind and memory. When the devourer loves the light-bearer, the heavens shall bleed. When their hearts beat as one, the end shall begin. The words reached Kane like a blade. He stood, trembling, staring at the reflection that was no longer just his own. In his mirror, a woman's eyes stared back, luminous, filled with pain and light. He reached toward it, and somewhere, Lysandra reached too. Their fingertips met against the glass of fate, never touching but feeling everything. The mirror shattered. Both gasped, stumbling back, their connection ripping apart with a sound like thunder. The moon outside flickered, half red, half silver, torn between night and dawn. Kane exhaled slowly, his voice breaking. "What are you, witchfire?" Far away, Lysandra whispered into the night, tears in her eyes. "Why do I feel like I already love you?" The wind carried their words into the stars, two souls tethered by something older than the gods, older than fate itself. And in the ruins of Moonspire Temple, the oracle's corpse smiled faintly. Her blood had dried, but her prophecy burned across the cracked altar, letters of fire searing into stone. The devourer and the light-bearer shall love and end the world. The night swallowed the words, but the moon did not forget. It pulsed once, as if alive, and every shadow in the realm turned its face toward the coming storm. The world had begun to awaken, and in that awakening, two hearts beat as one for the first time. The prophecy is real, and with each heartbeat they share, the world inches closer to ruin or salvation. The moon did not rest that night. It pulsed above the world like a beating heart, red, silver, alive. Its light sank into Kane's chamber, pooling across his floor in trembling veins. He hadn't moved since the mirror shattered. His breath came shallow, his body still trembling with the ghost of her touch. The world around him flickered between shadow and light, refusing to choose one. When he finally closed his eyes, he didn't sleep. He fell. Through silence, through stars, through memories not his own. and then into her. The dream realm was neither dark nor bright. It was both, and neither. A sea of colorless mist stretched infinitely, broken only by islands of floating light. Kane stood barefoot upon one, the ground warm as skin. His pulse raced. He could smell her before he saw her. Moonfire, wildflowers, rain. A figure stepped through the mist. Lysandra. Her silver hair moved as if touched by an unseen tide, and her eyes, gods, those eyes, reflected every phase of the moon at once. She looked at him the way one might look at a ghost or a long-forgotten sin. "You," she breathed. "You're real?" Kane couldn't speak. Words, for once, abandoned the Devourer King. The air between them vibrated with a dangerous harmony. He took a single step forward, and the mists recoiled like frightened spirits. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice trembling between fear and fascination. "This realm belongs to the goddess." "Then she sent me," he replied. His voice was low, rough, like stones grinding beneath water. "I've seen your face in my dreams for 100 years. Lysandra shook her head, backing away. "Lies." He moved closer anyway, slow, deliberate, like a predator stalking a light he couldn't kill. "I could feel your heartbeat, your pain. Your name burned inside me before I ever heard it." Her hand went to her wrist where the crescent mark still glowed. "The curse," she whispered. "It's you. You're the one bound to the devouring." He smiled faintly, a sad, resigned thing. "And you're the light I was damned to destroy." The world around them flickered, the dream tightening like a noose. Above, the stars dimmed to ash. Her breathing quickened. "I should kill you," she said, but her voice shook. "Then do it." Kane spread his arms. "If the gods wish to end me, let it be by your hand." She raised her palm. Silver light bloomed, searing and beautiful. It hit him square in the chest, and instead of pain, there was fire. Shared fire. They both gasped. The flame didn't consume and it connected. Threads of light and shadow spun from their chests, winding together like vines. Where they touched, the air hissed and cracked. Her power trembled. "Why can't I stop?" "Because fate doesn't ask." He stepped into the light until only inches separated them. His eyes burned like molten iron. Her lips parted as the pull between them became unbearable. The dream itself seemed to hold its breath. Her voice broke. "What are we?" "Condemned," he whispered, "or chosen." Their hands found each other without permission. The moment skin met skin, the world exploded. Light and darkness collided. Lightning stitched the sky. Thunder rippled through the void. Every nerve in their bodies screamed. For a single instant they saw everything, their pasts, their deaths, the moment they would destroy or save the world. And through it all, one truth burned brighter than the rest. Love. It was there, raw, desperate, impossible. It shouldn't have existed. But it did. She tried to pull away. He didn't let her. "Let go," she whispered, tears spilling like molten silver. "I can't." The light around them fractured. Fragments of the dream fell like glass, slicing through their clothes, their skin, their souls. His thumb brushed her cheek, tender, reverent, before the bond surged again. Pain lanced through them both. Blood ran down his arm. Her gasp echoed across the endless sky. "You're bleeding." He looked down. The wound on his chest, the crescent mark, had split open, bleeding real crimson. Not dream blood. Real, the dream was collapsing. Kane staggered back as the mist screamed and pulled them apart. Lysandra reached for him, too late. The light swallowed her, leaving only her voice. "Don't find me." He fell backward through the dark, her words echoing like prophecy. "Don't find me." But he already knew he would. Kane woke with a violent gasp. The first thing he saw was blood. Fresh, thick, staining his sheets. His hands were slick with it, his heart still pounding in unnatural rhythm. He touched his chest. The crescent wound was there, raw and hot. Her name tore from his lips before he could stop it. Lysandra! The room shook. Shadows on the walls twisted and fled from him. His curse was awake, and it knew her. He looked down at his palm, where faint traces of silver shimmered. Her light burned into his skin. He whispered almost to himself, "You are real." Outside, thunder rolled over Dravenmere. The blood moon loomed higher, watching. And across the world, in the silver woods of the Witchlands, Lysandra awoke with a scream. Her wrist burned. The mark bled faintly, glowing red. She pressed it to her heart, trembling. Era materialized beside her, eyes wide. "You walked the dream." Lysandra nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "I touched him." The spirit's voice trembled. "Then it has begun. The bond is no longer prophecy. It is alive." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, Lysandra whispered his name, not as a curse, but as something she didn't yet dare call love. Kane. And the world answered back in thunder. Kane wakes with blood on his hands and her name on his lips, proof that the dream wasn't a dream at all. Their connection is now real, and dangerous enough to burn both realms. The night after the dream burned through Kane's veins like wildfire, Dravenmere went to war. The moon hung low, swollen and red, staining the plains in its cruel light. From the towers his wolves gathered, hundreds, armored and restless, eyes like embers waiting for command. The air was heavy with iron and instinct. The Witchlands shimmered on the horizon, veiled in silver mist. Between them lay the No Man's Valley, once farmland, now battlefield. The witches had crossed the border first, their sentinels leaving trails of luminous sigils carved into the earth, spells pulsing like dying stars. Kane stood at the front, his breath visible in the chill. Every heartbeat echoed with hers, distant but constant. He could feel her pulse even now, soft beneath his ribs, as though the goddess herself had buried her within his chest. Thorn approached, helm under one arm. "You're distracted," he said. Kane didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the mist ahead. "You've not led a campaign beyond our borders in a decade," Thorn pressed. "Why now?" "Because something stirs in the Witchlands," Kane said quietly. "Something that calls to me." Thorn's mouth tightened. "A witch's trick." "Maybe." Kane's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "But tricks don't bleed into your dreams." Before Thorn could reply, a distant horn sounded, high, sharp, and otherworldly. The witches had arrived. The first bolts of moonfire streaked through the sky like arrows made of light. They crashed against the wolves' shields, hissing, searing the ground with runes. The scent of scorched fur and silver burned the air. "Advance," Kane ordered. The pack surged forward, a dark tide swallowing the silver haze. Steel met sorcery. The night erupted into chaos. Kane moved through it like shadow given purpose. He didn't fight like a king. He fought like something born from death. Every swing of his blade tore through magic barriers, every movement followed by the faint pulse of his curse, the rhythm of her heartbeat. A witch sentinel appeared before him, cloaked in white fire, chanting in an ancient tongue. Her voice was pure and terrible. He parried her strike, the impact sending sparks across the valley. Her face was hidden behind a veil of light, until he drove her backward, slicing through the mist. The veil fell. For an instant, his breath caught. She wore Lysandra's sigil, the crescent moon with the bleeding line, glowing at her throat. "Who sent you?" Kane demanded. The witch's eyes were fierce, defiant. "The one who will end you." He lunged, disarming her, pinning her to the scorched ground. Her palm pressed against his chest, and the mark beneath his skin ignited. Agony ripped through him. He roared, feeling his body tear between man and beast. "Curseborn," she hissed. "You feel her, don't you?" Kane froze. "You dream of her," the witch continued, smiling now despite the blade at her throat. "You belong to her." The admission struck deeper than her magic. He hesitated, for just a breath. And that was enough. She thrust her hand toward him, releasing a surge of moonlight. It cut through his armor, burning his shoulder, but his blade was already in motion. Steel met flesh. The witch fell. For a moment, silence. Then her sigil flared blindingly bright. Her blood spilled silver across his hand. Kane staggered back as the light spread, wrapping around his arm, searing into his veins. Whispers filled the air. Her voice. Lysandra's voice. Kane. He gasped, clutching his chest. The battlefield vanished. The world spun. He saw flashes, her standing in the forest, moonlight bleeding down her skin, eyes wide as if seeing him through time. "Don't find me," she whispered again. But the witch beneath him convulsed, her dying eyes wide and white. And for one fleeting instant, they weren't hers anymore. They were Lysandra's. "Kane," the dying witch said, but the voice wasn't her own. His heart stopped. Her mouth moved once more, now slow, deliberate. "Stop this." Then she was gone. The light died with her. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Kane sank to one knee, staring at the corpse, the mark on his chest burning like molten iron. The scent of blood mixed with moonfire filled his lungs. His wolves were still fighting, unaware their king had just touched the edge of prophecy. Thorn appeared moments later, sword dripping, armor dented. "We've pushed them back. The witches are retreating." Kane didn't look up. They were guarding something. Thorn frowned. "What do you mean?" He rose slowly, his eyes distant, haunted. "They didn't come to fight. They came to warn me." Thorn scoffed. "Warn you?" "They're witches, Kane. They speak in riddles." Kane turned his gaze to the dead woman's body. The sigil at her throat had stopped glowing, but its shape, the crescent with the bleeding line, pulsed faintly beneath her skin. He reached out and touched it. The world around him shuddered. In a single breath, he saw her again, Lysandra standing in her sanctum, her hand pressed over her heart. She looked directly at him, though she shouldn't have been able to. The connection snapped as Thorn grabbed his shoulder. "Kane, you're bleeding again." He looked down. His palm was slick with silver blood, not his own. The witch's essence had fused with his. "She's real," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone. Thorn's expression darkened. "Who?" Kane turned toward the Witchlands, eyes burning crimson in the moonlight. "The Lightbearer." Thorn flinched. "That's just a myth." Kane's lips curled into something between a smile and a curse. "So is the Devourer. Yet here I stand." Thunder rolled again across the horizon, but it wasn't thunder. It was something older. The air thickened, humming with prophecy. Kane looked up at the moon, the same blood moon that had haunted his dreams, and whispered into the night, "If she is my doom, then let her find me." The mark at his chest flared once more, bright enough to cast his shadow across the valley, and somewhere deep within the Witchlands, Lysandra fell to her knees, gasping, feeling that same pulse echo inside her. Their hearts, now one rhythm, their fates, one curse. The first hunt had begun. As the witch's body cools, her eyes flash with Lysandra's, confirming the impossible. The Devourer King has killed a fragment of his fated mate's soul. And now the bond hungers for more. Sleep didn't come to Kane. It claimed him. The moment his eyes closed, the world burned away. He found himself standing in a wasteland of ash and flame, a place where the sky was a wound and the moon bled red light onto the ruins below. Mountains smoldered like dying embers. Rivers glowed like veins of molten silver. And in the heart of it all, a single figure waited. She stood barefoot on cracked earth, her hair a river of white gold that shimmered with heat, her eyes brighter than the stars that dared not shine. She was neither illusion nor flesh, but something between, a being carved of light and sorrow. Kane knew her before she spoke. "Lysandra," he whispered. Her gaze cut to him like the edge of prophecy. "So it's true," she said softly, voice trembling with fury and awe. "You wear my mark." He looked down. The sigil on his chest burned through his shirt, the same crescent and bleeding line that had glowed on the dying witch. "I didn't choose this," he said. "No one does," she replied. "The bond chooses for us." They stood several paces apart, the air between them alive with something that felt like lightning and grief intertwined. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Shadows coiled and stretched, whispering in a tongue older than God's. Kane took a slow step forward. "You've haunted my dreams for nights uncounted." Lysandra's lips curved, not in kindness but in recognition. "And you've hunted my sentinels in waking life. I didn't know they were yours." "Does it matter?" she said, her tone sharp, but her eyes flickered, just once, with pain. "Their deaths burn through me. I feel every cut, every scream. When you killed her." She paused, voice breaking slightly. I saw through her eyes. Kane's chest tightened. "Then you saw what she tried to do. She would have ended me." "She tried to stop you," Lysandra said, "from coming closer." The silence that followed was not peace. It was tension drawn thin as silk. He stepped nearer. The flames bent around him, drawn toward his shadow. "And yet here I am." Lysandra's breath hitched. She could feel him, not the man but the pulse beneath him. It was like standing before a storm that wanted to swallow the world. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Because something in you called me," he said, and something in me answered. Their eyes locked, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The red moon above them pulsed, bleeding light down like liquid fire. The bond between them thrummed, violent, magnetic. He took another step forward. She didn't retreat. "I should hate you," Lysandra said quietly. Kane's voice was almost a whisper. "Then hate me closer." The air shattered between them. Flames coiled upward as they collided, not in battle but in gravity. Their hands met, and the moment skin touched, the dream screamed. Fire erupted from the contact, searing through both of them. The sky split open. Every heartbeat became a drum of war and want. Kane staggered, clutching her wrist, eyes wild with shock. What is this?" "The bond," she gasped, unable to pull away. "It's trying to merge us." Their palms glowed where they touched, light spilling through the cracks between their fingers. For a moment they weren't two beings but one, flashes of memory bleeding between them. He saw her childhood beneath the silver trees of Etheria, laughter echoing through white corridors. She saw him kneeling in the ashes of his home, blood on his hands and the crown of the devourer forced upon him. Love and ruin intertwined. She pulled free with a cry, stumbling back. "This isn't love, it's a curse." Kane's voice was hoarse but sure. "Then let it curse us both." "You don't understand," Lysandra said, trembling. "If we yield to it, if we ever love, the world will end." He tilted his head slightly. "Maybe the world deserves to burn." Her eyes widened. "You would destroy everything?" He stepped closer until his breath mingled with hers. "I would destroy anything that stands between us." Lysandra's throat tightened. For a heartbeat she saw not a monster, but a man broken by destiny. His eyes, crimson in the firelight, held something devastating, devotion born from doom. "You're not meant to feel," she whispered. "And yet every night," Kane murmured, "I dream of your name." Her heart stuttered. "Why do you call me that?" He smiled faintly. "Witchfire. Because you burn me and light me all the same." She closed her eyes, fighting the pull that threatened to undo her resolve. "And you," she said breathless, "are the end of light." When she opened her eyes again, his hand was already at her cheek. His touch was fever, dangerous, reverent. "This isn't real," she said, though her body betrayed her with every trembling breath. "It feels real enough to kill me," Kane replied. Their lips nearly met, not quite at the distance between them, a razor's edge. The air hummed, charged, sacred. Every heartbeat was a war drum, every breath a prayer. Then the dream shifted. The ground quaked. The blood moon above them pulsed once, twice, and then began to bleed. Streams of red light poured from its surface, falling like rain. Where it touched, fire bloomed. The wasteland cracked open. Lysandra gasped, stepping back. "No, no, not yet." "What is this?" Kane demanded, voice echoing like thunder. "The prophecy," she said, eyes wide with dread. "It's already beginning." Around them, shadows rose like smoke. Whispers of ancient gods twisted through the storm. The mark on Kane's chest blazed. The same mark burned on her palm. They were mirrors, two halves of one impossible whole. The dream began to unravel. The flame swallowed her form, light bending, distorting. "Kane." He reached for her. "Lysandra." Their hands brushed, and the world detonated. He woke in darkness, gasping. The sheets were soaked through, his body fever-hot. His palm still glowed faintly with her light. Blood streaked his fingers. He didn't know if it was hers or his. Miles away in her sanctum, Lysandra awoke with a scream. The air around her shimmered. Every mirror in her chamber cracked. Her skin burned where his touch had been. The moon outside her window, once silver, now wept crimson across the night. The prophecy had stirred. The bond had awakened. And neither could sleep again. As the dream fades, both awaken fevered, bound by fire and blood. Above them the moon bleeds openly for the first time in centuries, a celestial wound marking the beginning of their world's unraveling, and their love's impossible rise. The world outside Dravenmere Keep had turned red. The moon hung like an open wound over the fortress, spilling its light across the blackened battlements and silver banners. Below, the wolves stirred restlessly, their howls echoing like omens through the mountains. Inside the great hall, shadows ruled. Kane sat upon the obsidian throne, carved from the bones of fallen beasts and veined with dark crystal that pulsed faintly, as if alive. His eyes were fixed on the vast moonlit window before him, though his thoughts were far away. Witchfire. Her name haunted him like a curse whispered against the skin. He still felt her, under his ribs, in the pulse behind his teeth. When he'd woken, the mark over his heart had been searing hot as though the dream hadn't ended. And though he'd washed away the blood from his hands, the scent lingered. Iron and smoke, and her. A voice broke through the silence. "My king." Thorn stepped forward, cloak dragging across the black stone. He was Kane's second, a wolf forged of loyalty and calculation, eyes sharp as drawn blades. Around him, members of the council lined the chamber, generals, seers, and old warriors whose faith had begun to fracture under the crimson sky. "You summoned us," Thorn said, tone clipped, "and yet you sit in silence." Kane's gaze drifted to the council. "Tell me what the people whisper." Thorn's jaw tightened. "They say the moon bleeds because the gods have grown impatient. Some claim the devourer has defied his fate." "And what do you believe?" Kane asked quietly. Thorn hesitated. "I believe something binds you, my king, something unseen. The men have heard you speak in your sleep, the witch's name on your tongue." The chamber stirred with unease. Kane's hand flexed on the armrest. "You think me mad." "I think," Thorn said carefully, "you've seen what others cannot, but dreams can lie." "They don't," Kane growled. His voice rolled through the hall like thunder. "I saw her. I felt her." A murmur rippled through the council, fear disguised as reason. "The light-bearer?" asked one of the elder wolves. "The cursed witch of the prophecy?" Kane rose slowly from his throne. "A woman. Flesh and fire. The one who bears the mark that mirrors mine." He tore open the front of his tunic, revealing the sigil burned into his skin, glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. A few of the council gasped. "By the old gods," whispered a seer. "It lives." "She's real," Kane said, voice low and raw. "And this is proof. She's tied to me by blood and magic older than the keep itself." Thorn's expression hardened. "Then she's the reason for the moon's wound, the reason the pack grows restless. If this bond is what they fear, you must sever it." "Sever it?" Kane's lips twisted. "You speak as though the bond were a chain I could break. It burns me from within." "Then burn her first," Thorn said coldly. "Find her and end it before it ends us all." The hall went still. Kane's gaze lingered on Thorn, sharp, unreadable. His eyes were not those of a ruler now, but of a predator fighting his nature. "She's not an enemy," Kane said at last. "Not yet." Thorn stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The prophecy says their love will end the world. You would risk that?" Something in Kane's face cracked. Not fear, but defiance. "I would risk everything before letting fate choose for me." A tense silence fell. Then one of the generals, old, scarred, trembling slightly, spoke up. "My king, forgive the boldness, but your obsession clouds your judgment. The pack has noticed. They whisper of a shadow cult within our ranks. Those who bow to the harrowed god and claim the devourer's heart has weakened." Kane turned his gaze to him slowly. "Do you believe them?" "I believe," the man said, swallowing hard, "that wolves follow strength, not mercy." Kane descended from the dais. His boots echoed against the black stone. "Then let them see how strong mercy can bleed." Without warning, he drew the blade from his side and drove it into the floor before the council. The stone split like bone. Shadows flared from the crack, curling up his arms like living smoke. "I will find her," Kane said, voice rising to something that shook the walls. "I will find the witch who bears my mark. And when I do—" The sigil on his chest ignited, and for a heartbeat, the entire hall glowed red. "If she means to end my world, I'll end hers first." The shadows retreated, leaving silence behind. Thorn bowed his head, though his eyes never left Kane's. "As you command, my king." The council dispersed one by one, some muttering prayers, others exchanging glances of fear and calculation. When the doors finally closed, only Thorn remained. He stood in the long silence that followed, watching the red light bleed across the throne. Kane's silhouette was motionless, a god made of exhaustion and fury. "Rest, my friend," Thorn said quietly. "The hunt will come soon enough." But Kane did not answer. His gaze was still fixed on the window, on the bleeding moon beyond. Inside him, the mark pulsed, a heartbeat that was not his own. Thorn left the hall and descended into the lower corridors of Dravenmere Keep, where torches burned blue and the air smelled of iron and secrets. He moved with purpose through the twisting halls, down to the underchambers, places forbidden to most. At the end of a narrow passage stood a door of black steel carved with runes of the old faith. He hesitated only once before knocking twice. The door opened on its own. Inside, cloaked figures waited, the scent of incense heavy, the walls marked with the sigil of the harrowed god, a crescent devouring the sun. At their center stood a man whose face was hidden beneath a veil of smoke. "You come late, Thorn of the Nightborn," the emissary said, voice hollow and ancient. "I come with news," Thorn replied. "The devourer's heart is corrupted. The witch has him." The emissary tilted his head. "Then our time draws near. The prophecy unfolds." Thorn's jaw tightened. "And if he discovers my hand in this?" "He will not," the emissary murmured. "The gods blind their chosen before they break them." Thorn looked down, the faintest flicker of regret in his eyes. "I once swore to protect him." "Then protect him still," said the emissary, "by guiding his fall." The torches dimmed, their flames turning black. As Thorn leaves the chamber, the sigil of the harrowed god flares faintly beneath his sleeve. the same mark now burning on Kane's heart. Above Dravenmere, the moon bleeds brighter, and somewhere in the Witchlands, Lysandra feels a hand of shadow reaching for her through the bond. The betrayal has begun. The Witchlands breathed under the light of the broken moon. Silver mist curled above the trees, whispering through branches that glittered like glass. Rivers glowed faintly blue, pulsing with lunar magic. Every flower, every blade of grass seemed alive, tethered to the heartbeat of the moon itself. And that heartbeat had begun to falter. Lysandra stood on the terrace of the Moonspire sanctum, her white hair stirring in the midnight wind. From here she could see the horizon shimmering where the blood moon touched it, a red wound spilling over her world. The elders said it was an omen of war, but she knew better. It was him. That bond, dark, restless, alive, coiled beneath her skin. She felt it flare and twist whenever he dreamed, felt his rage as if it were her own. The night before, she had woken with her heart pounding and the taste of iron on her tongue, as if she had bitten into his violence. Now the air itself hummed with his presence. A voice echoed softly behind her. "You feel him again?" Lysandra turned. Elder Myron approached slowly, the silver threads of her robe catching the light. Her eyes, ancient and pale, regarded the younger witch with weary knowledge. "I told myself it was only the curse," Lysandra said, "that the bond was nothing more than prophecy trying to claim me." "And now?" Lysandra's gaze drifted to the bleeding moon. "Now it feels like a heartbeat. His, inside mine." Myron stepped closer, placing a frail hand upon her arm. "The devouring bond is older than kingdoms, older than even the moon-born line. It was forged when love defied death itself, and cursed both realms." She guided Lysandra down the spiral stairs, into the sanctum's heart. Moonfire lanterns flickered against ancient walls etched with sigils of blood and light. Scrolls and relics lay scattered across the long marble table, each humming faintly as they passed. "This," Myron said, gesturing to a scroll bound in black silk, "is the Devourer's record. It was written by the first light-bearer. Few have dared read it." Lysandra's fingers hovered over it. "Why?" "Because every line is written in blood." Lysandra untied the silk and unrolled the parchment. The words shimmered in silver and red, shifting like living fire. "When the moon wept, and the sun hid its face, the devourer and the light-bearer were bound in love and ruin. Should one perish, so shall the other. For the heart that beats in two cannot live in one." Her chest tightened. "If one dies, the other dies," Myron finished. "You see now why the curse is called devouring. It consumes both, love and death intertwined." Lysandra swallowed hard. The room seemed to tilt. The air thickened with dread. "So if I destroy him, I destroy myself. Yet if you let him live," the elder said softly, "the world may burn." Silence stretched, long and heavy. Lysandra pressed her hand over her heart. Beneath her palm she felt the faint rhythm. Not hers, not fully. It pulsed in sync with something distant, primal and impossibly alive. Myron turned toward the other witches who lingered in the shadows, listening. "You know what must be done. The bond cannot remain unbroken. The Devourer's return threatens every covenant we have kept." The witches murmured in agreement, their eyes flickering with fear and fury. "She must end it," said one. "Strike before the moon fully bleeds." "She cannot," said another, quieter. "The bond will kill her." "Better one heart than the world," Myron hissed. Lysandra's voice cut through their argument like a blade. "Enough." The hall fell silent. The moonlight deepened, gathering around her. "You would have me kill him," she said slowly, "to protect the world from a prophecy none of you fully understand." Myron's tone hardened. "The prophecy does not lie, child. The devourer and the light-bearer shall love, and end the world." "You would risk all creation for the hunger of one man?" Lysandra turned away. "You speak as though I chose this. Her reflection wavered in a mirror of liquid moonfire. Pale skin, silver eyes, the faint shimmer of the mark on her wrist. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. His heartbeat. She whispered, "Every time he breathes, I feel it. Every time he bleeds, I ache." How can love destroy the world when it already feels like it's destroying me? Myron's expression softened for a moment. Then you understand why it must end. Lysandra closed the scroll and held it to her chest. Maybe love doesn't end the world. Maybe it reveals what's left worth saving. The elder stepped back, fear flickering in her eyes. You sound like her. Who? The first light-bearer. Lysandra frowned. She was the one who bound the devourer. She sealed him away. Yes, Mirren said, voice almost a whisper. But before she sealed him, she loved him. That night, the wind turned sharp. The Witchlands darkened beneath the bleeding moon. The trees groaned as if in mourning, and the rivers turned crimson at their edges. Lysandra sat alone in her study, surrounded by scrolls and sigils. Her hands shook as she traced the old symbols, searching for answers, or perhaps escape. Each line she read led her back to him, the devourer, the man whose soul burned against hers like wildfire. At first she told herself it was duty, that she sought knowledge to destroy him. But deep down, she knew she was searching for something else, a reason not to. The candles guttered. A shadow passed over the room. She froze. Every instinct screamed that something had entered the Witchlands, something that didn't belong to her realm of light. The wind outside fell silent. The air grew cold. Her hand brushed the dagger on her table, carved from moonstone and ash. From beyond the window came a low, haunting sound, the kind that stirred the bones of old gods. A howl, long and deep. The shadows in the trees shifted, and then she saw it. A figure at the border of the glade, tall and dark, the faint silver of his eyes catching the moonlight. His form rippled, half man, half wolf, as if the shadows themselves obeyed him. Kane. Her pulse spiked, the mark on her wrist igniting like flame. She felt his presence before her mind could accept it. The pull between them was a storm breaking, violent, magnetic, ancient. He took a step forward, crossing the sacred line that no Nightborn had crossed in a century. Her breath caught. Every scroll, every prophecy, every warning from her elders became meaningless in that instant. Because the moment he stepped into the Witchlands, she knew one thing with terrifying certainty. The devourer had come for her, and part of her, the part bound to him, had been waiting. The air split with a sound of his growl echoing through the trees. The moon flared blood red. In the sanctum above, the witches' wards trembled and cracked. For the first time in centuries, shadow and light had touched. The hunt had begun. The Witchlands held its breath. Wind swept through the silverwood trees, scattering pale leaves that shimmered under the blood moon. The air smelled of iron and stormlight. And there, at the border where shadow met moonfire, Kane stood, half cloaked in darkness, half illuminated in the bleeding red glow. Lysandra faced him from the clearing's edge, moonlight coiling around her like living flame. For a heartbeat, neither moved. They only watched. Two souls who had dreamed each other before they'd ever spoken, now breathing the same night air for the first time. The mark on her wrist flared. The one on his chest burned in answer. The space between them trembled. You crossed into forbidden ground, she said at last, voice steady though her pulse thundered. No Nightborn lives who dares step beyond that line. His voice was low, rough, like gravel soaked in heat. Then perhaps I'm already dead. The sound of him shook something deep inside her. Familiar, wrong, beautiful. Lysandra lifted her hand and the moonlight gathered around her fingers, a spear of pure light forming in her grasp. Leave now, or you'll wish you had. Kane's lips curved, not in humor, but recognition. So it's true. The light-bearer lives. She tensed, and the devourer breathes. Barely, he said. He took another step forward, and the mist at his feet darkened, spiraling like living shadow. When his boots touched the moonlit grass, the ground hissed, light and darkness clashing. Lysandra raised her weapon higher, though her throat tightened. The curse pulsed through her veins, whispering his heartbeat into her mind. Every instinct told her to strike. Every part of her soul screamed not to. "What are you?" she demanded. Kane's gaze burned, feral and human all at once. "The one who's been dreaming of your death, and still can't bring himself to wish for it." The words hit her like a blow. Before she could respond, the wind erupted. Kane moved, fast, inhumanly fast. One moment he was across the clearing, the next he was before her, the air splitting with his momentum. Lysandra reacted on instinct. The spear of light swung, slicing through the space where he had been, searing the shadows that trailed him. He twisted aside, claws erupting from his hands, eyes flashing silver. They collided in a storm of power, moonfire against shadow flame. Light struck darkness. Darkness devoured light. The impact sent a shockwave tearing through the trees. Sparks danced like falling stars. Lysandra leapt back, her breath sharp. "You shouldn't be able to enter here." "The wards break," he said simply, his voice strained, eyes flickering between man and beast. "They break when I follow you." Her heart faltered. "You followed me?" "I tried to stay away." He looked at his hands, trembling, marked, shaking with contained hunger. "But the bond—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "You called to me." "I did not." "Yes," he said, stepping closer, eyes blazing. "Every heartbeat, every dream, you've been dragging me here without knowing it." "That's impossible." "Then why?" Kane said, his tone a dark whisper. "Can I feel your fear?" Lysandra's spear trembled in her grip. Her breath came uneven. He was right. He felt her fear. And worse, she could feel his pain. It seared through her ribs like her own flesh had burned. "Stop," she said, lowering her weapon slightly. "This isn't real. This is the curse trying to bind us." He stared at her, not as a king or a beast, but as a man torn apart. It already has. The air shuddered between them. Then, movement. Kane lunged, his claws arced toward her throat, a flash of shadowed fury. But she was faster. She caught his wrist mid-strike, her palm glowing white. Light flared between them, searing, alive. He hissed in pain, but neither let go. They stood locked together, his darkness crawling up her arm like veins of night, her light burning across his skin. Every pulse between them was agony and longing in one. "Why can't I kill you?" she whispered. Kane's eyes, molten silver, met hers. "Because I'd bleed with you." Something inside her cracked. He shoved her back suddenly, like a man breaking from his own thoughts. She stumbled, raising her spear again, but her focus faltered, her power flickering like a dying flame. "Get out," she said through clenched teeth, "before I forget mercy." He smiled faintly, but it wasn't cruel. Mercy, from a witch who glows like vengeance. The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. She took a step forward. "You think this is fate's game?" He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "No, fate doesn't burn like this." For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just them, breath and shadow, and the wild rhythm of hearts not meant to beat together. The air pressed close, charged with something unspeakable. Then Lysandra moved first. She hurled the spear of light, a perfect arc through the blood-stained air. It struck him square in the chest. The impact was thunder. Kane fell to one knee, light bursting from the wound like molten glass, and then, impossibly, dimming. The light faded into smoke, leaving only torn cloth and unbroken skin. Lysandra froze. He looked down, then up at her, and for the first time she saw something like awe in his expression. "You can't kill me," he murmured. "The bond won't let you." Her weapon flickered out. She could barely breathe. "You should be dead," she whispered. He rose to his feet, slow, deliberate, every motion lined with power restrained. "Perhaps I am. Perhaps we both are." The wind howled. The blood moon blazed overhead, crimson spilling across the forest like a wound. She turned to flee, to run, to breathe, to forget what she'd just seen. But his voice caught her mid-step. "Lysandra." She froze. The name fell from his tongue with such intimacy, such certainty, that the ground itself seemed to still. She turned back, eyes wide. "How do you know my name?" He looked at her, not as predator or king, but as something lost. "Because it was the first word the curse taught me." The world went silent. The blood moon pulsed once more, and the wind carried her name again, not from his mouth this time, but from the trees, the shadows, the bond itself. The devourer and the light-bearer had met, and the prophecy had begun to breathe. The moment Lysandra vanished into the silverwood mist, Kane dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. The mark blazed through his flesh, not in pain, but in recognition. Somewhere deep within him, the harrowed god whispered, "Now that you've found her, can you survive her?" Dravenmere Keep had never felt colder. The ancient fortress, carved from obsidian stone and built on the bones of fallen kings, hummed with unease. Torches guttered in the halls. The scent of iron and smoke hung thick in the air, the smell of wolves ready to turn on their own. Kane strode through the throne corridor, cloak torn, armor scorched from his encounter with Lysandra. He hadn't slept since. Every heartbeat still echoed with her name. Every breath burned with the memory of her light. But now the halls that once knelt to him whispered behind his back. He could feel it, the shift, the tension, the waiting teeth in the dark. Thorn stood before the throne when Kane entered, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and cold-eyed. The general's armor gleamed, polished as if for ceremony. Around him a ring of Nightborn stood, loyal once, but tonight their loyalty smelled like fear. "My king returns," Thorn said, bowing with mock grace. "From the Witchlands, no less." Kane's eyes flicked to him, a warning in their glacial calm. "You speak as if it were treason." "It is treason," Thorn said, straightening. "You consort with witches. You bring their scent into these halls, the pack smells it on you." Kane's voice dropped to a low growl. "Watch your tongue." Thorn didn't flinch. "No. Watch your mind. It's slipping. Every moon your control weakens. You vanish into dreams and return with madness in your eyes. You speak her name in your sleep. You think we don't hear?" The chamber darkened, shadows curling like smoke around Kane's feet. "You forget your place, Thorn." "I remember it well," Thorn said. "It was beside a king, not beneath a curse." The wolves shifted restlessly, claws clicking against stone. Kane's patience snapped. "You dare accuse me of corruption when you cower behind whispers?" "I don't whisper," Thorn said. His voice rang like steel. "I act." The air changed, fast. A dozen blades scraped from sheaths. Shadows lunged. Kane moved like a storm unleashed, eyes flaring silver, darkness spilling from his hands. He caught the first attacker mid-strike, crushing his throat in one motion, spinning to tear another's blade aside. The air exploded with force, stone cracked under the weight of his power. But there were too many. The keep erupted into chaos, and wolves turning on their king, their howls echoing through the black spires. Kane fought like a god cornered, every motion fueled by rage and betrayal. Yet for every man he felled, two more took his place. A blade slipped past his guard, buried deep into his side. He roared, lightless power bursting outward in a violent wave. The hall's torches snuffed out, plunging everything into shadow. When the smoke cleared, half the hall lay in ruin. Bodies scattered, walls cracked. And in the center, Thorn stood untouched, his eyes gleaming with something more than ambition. The sigil of the harrowed god glowed faintly at his throat. Kane saw it and froze, realization slicing deeper than the wound in his ribs. "You've sworn yourself to him," Kane rasped. Thorn smiled faintly. "To the true god, yes. One who promises rebirth, not ruin. You, my king, are the ruin." Kane's power flickered. The blood from his side burned like liquid fire. He staggered back, every breath ragged. "The harrowed god warned us," Thorn continued. "The devourer would fall to a witch's light. And look at you now, bleeding for her." Kane lunged. Pure instinct, pure fury. But Thorn was ready. His blade met Kane's claws with a crack of thunder. Energy screamed between them, darkness colliding with something ancient and divine. For a heartbeat, Kane almost overpowered him. Then Thorn whispered a word, not mortal speech, but something from the deep void, and the mark on Kane's chest erupted in agony. His legs buckled, the curse turned inward, devouring its bearer. He fell to one knee, choking on blood and fire. Thorn leaned close, voice low. "The pack needs a king of mine, not madness. Rest now, Kane, you've ruled long enough." The blade rose for the final strike. But the bond, that cursed searing bond, flared. A rush of moonlight, faint but furious, burst from Kane's wound. Thorn staggered back, blinded. Kane seized the moment. With the last of his strength he shifted, his form melting into shadow and wolf. He crashed through the shattered window, plummeting into the cold night. The forest swallowed him whole. Blood marked his path, dark streaks across snow and stone. But he didn't stop. The curse guided him. The bond pulled him. North. Through the dark. Toward the scent that both damned and saved him. Toward her. Hours later, the Witchlands stirred. Lysandra stood at the border of the silver wood, wind tugging at her hair. The moon hung low and full, its light pale against the mist. Something had been stirring for days. An unease in the magic, a heartbeat not her own trembling beneath the soil. Then she saw it. A shadow stumbling from the tree line, half collapsed, dragging itself toward her wards. Her magic surged in warning, the scent of blood, wolf, and ruin. She lifted her hand, ready to strike. But then she saw the mark. That same cursed sigil, burning faintly through torn armor. Kane. He fell to his knees at the border, gasping, blood slicking his hands. For a heartbeat, Lysandra froze, torn between instinct and something deeper, older. Then she moved. Her magic caught him before he hit the ground completely, lowering him gently onto the grass. His skin was cold, his breath shallow, his eyes fluttered open, silver fading to gray. "Didn't come to fight," he rasped. "Didn't know where else to go." Her throat tightened. "You shouldn't be here." He managed a weak smile. "I never should have left." The wards shimmered, ancient magic hesitating, recognizing the bond between them. The world seemed to pause. For the first time, she didn't push him away. Lysandra knelt beside the enemy who was fated to end her, and laid her hand against his wound. "Rest," she whispered. "You're safe here, devourer." And as her magic touched his skin, the blood moon above them trembled, its crimson hue deepening to black. The prophecy whispered once more in the wind. When the devourer bleeds in the light-bearer's arms, the end begins to stir. As Kane slipped into unconsciousness, Lysandra felt his heartbeat sync with hers again, steady, unrelenting, cursed. But in that rhythm was something new, not doom, something terrifyingly close to love. The Witchlands slept under silver rain. Each droplet shimmered with lunar light, falling like blessings from a weary god. The air was cool and heavy, with the scent of wild jasmine and blood. Lysandra's moon sanctuary lay deep within a valley of crystal roots, where the light of the moon was pure and unbroken. The great marble basin at its heart was filled with enchanted water, clear as glass, yet pulsing faintly, alive with whispers of the divine. She had never brought anyone here, not her kin, not her sisters, not even Era. It was sacred, a place meant only for her communion with the moon. But tonight, she carried the devourer into it. Kane's body was heavy with shadow and fever. His breath rattled, shallow and sharp. The wounds in his side had gone black, rimmed with an energy she didn't recognize, something ancient and venomous. She laid him beside the basin, the moonlight painting his face in pale fire. For a long time she only looked at him. The same man who had haunted her dreams for months, the same man who, by prophecy, should have been her executioner. Now he looked fragile, not weak, but mortal, in a way she had never imagined him. Her heart ached at the sight, and that frightened her more than any curse. She stripped away his torn armor, revealing the mark that pulsed across his chest, a burning crescent and fang, bound by veins of silver. Her mark glimmered faintly in answer on her own wrist, responding like twin stars caught in orbit. "This shouldn't be possible," she whispered. Era's voice echoed faintly from the shadows. "And yet it is." The spirit guardian drifted closer, her form half mist, half starlight. "If you save him, Lysandra, you'll bind your soul to his completely. The curse will no longer sleep between you. It will live through you both." Lysandra's gaze didn't waver. "He saved me from Thorn's wolves. He came here wounded, not as an enemy." Era's eyes softened. "And if that kindness ends the world?" Lysandra hesitated. Then let the gods bear that blame, not me." She pressed her hand to Kane's chest. The magic flared instantly, light and shadow colliding in violent beauty. His body arched, a low growl tearing from his throat. The mark on his chest blazed through her palm like molten glass. Her breath caught, her veins lit with fire. The spell was forbidden, one used by the ancients to merge life force. It was never meant for lovers or enemies, only for those who could not live apart. Their souls began to fuse. Images flooded her mind, not her memories, his. Snow, war, the night he was cursed beneath the blood moon. The goddess's voice cold and damning. "For every life you take, you will hunger forever, until the one meant for you burns the hunger from your heart." She gasped, tearing her hand away. The connection snapped, but not completely. When she looked down, his eyes were open, silver and black, gleaming faintly, watching her. "Why did you stop?" he rasped. His voice was rough, half shadow, half man. "You would have died," she said, her own voice trembling. "Or I would have, I don't know which." He smiled faintly, blood drying on his lips. "Then we're both still cursed." He reached for her, not with the strength of a king, but the hesitance of a man who didn't know if he deserved to be touched. She didn't pull away. Their fingers brushed, and the bond surged again. Not pain this time, something deeper. Heat, pulse, memory. The air grew electric with it, like the world itself was holding its breath. "I saw you before this," he murmured, "in dreams. I thought you were only a punishment." "And I thought you were only a monster," she whispered. Their gazes locked, and for the first time neither looked away. Outside, the moon swelled. The silver rain slowed. The world went utterly still. He studied her face, the faint silver veins glowing beneath her skin, the calm fire in her eyes. "You are not what they said you were," he said softly. "Neither are you," she replied. For a moment something unspoken passed between them, the unbearable possibility that their love wasn't the curse at all, but the cure. Then his body seized. His eyes went blank, rolling white. The temperature in the sanctuary dropped. The moonlight dimmed. Lysandra stumbled back as a low, unnatural voice rolled from Kane's throat. Deep, resonant, ancient. "Witchfire," it said, cold as a grave. "The bond defies the covenant. End it, or the world burns." Lysandra's pulse thundered. "Who are you?" The voice laughed through him, a sound like bones grinding on stone. "You know me, the harrowed god, the keeper of the covenant you try to break. Kane's body convulsed. Black veins crawled across his skin. "Leave him!" she shouted, slamming her palms together. Magic erupted, a dome of moonlight bursting around them. But the god's voice only deepened. "You cannot save him. His hunger is mine. His fate is yours. Devour her, devourer, or the world will drown in its own light." Kane's body arched, claws forming where his hands had been. His lips curled back in agony, or temptation. For a heartbeat, she saw the beast beneath the man. Then, as suddenly as it came, the darkness withdrew. He collapsed, motionless. Lysandra dropped beside him, shaking. "Kane," she whispered, pressing her hand to his chest. His heart was still beating, hard, fast, and in rhythm with hers. The moon above flickered. Era appeared beside her, silent for once. "You've bound him to you, Lysandra. There's no turning back." Lysandra's eyes glistened. "Then I'll face whatever comes." She brushed her thumb over his cheek, gentle, trembling. "We'll break the curse together, even if it breaks the world." Kane stirred in his sleep, his lips parting just enough to whisper her name, a prayer or a promise. Outside, the moonlight turned crimson for a heartbeat, then faded back to silver. But the echo of the god's words lingered in the wind. "Devour her, or the world burns." As dawn touched the Witchlands, Lysandra realized something horrifying. Every breath Kane took now echoed in her chest. Their souls were no longer two. The devourer and the light-bearer had truly become one. The morning after the binding was too still. Even the birds of the Witchlands refused to sing. The air smelled faintly of metal, of something old awakening beneath the soil. Lysandra hadn't slept. She sat beside the basin where she'd healed Kane, staring into the moon water now darkened with streaks of silver and black. The reflection staring back at her wasn't hers alone anymore. She saw him there too, his face flickering within her own. Every pulse in her veins answered his heartbeat. Every breath she drew matched his. It was intoxicating and terrifying. When Kane finally woke, the fever had gone. His eyes were calmer now, the silver in them less feral. But he felt it too, the tether humming like a second heartbeat beneath his skin. "You shouldn't have saved me," he said quietly, voice low as thunder beneath clouded skies. "You'd be dead," she replied. "Maybe that's what the gods wanted." She turned to face him. "And what do you want, Kane?" He hesitated then. "To understand what we are before I destroy it." They both knew where they needed to go. The Moonspire ruins, the place where the first covenant had been sealed, the place where all of this began. They traveled through the shadowed woods in silence. The Witchlands were uneasy, roots twisted out of the ground as though trying to escape the earth itself. The moon, even by daylight, was faintly red, bleeding softly across the sky. Era accompanied them in spectral form, gliding like mist. "You tread near sacred ground," she warned as they neared the ruins. "Even the gods do not walk here without price." "Then they'll take their price from me," Lysandra said. Kane's gaze lingered on her, admiration and dread colliding. The bond between them pulsed again, steady and undeniable. When they reached the ruins, time seemed to stop. The moonspire rose like a broken fang against the sky, vast, ancient, carved from stone that shimmered faintly under the red moonlight. Once, it had been the heart of the moonborn order. Now it was a grave. The air was heavy with old magic, the kind that whispered memories through the wind. They descended into the central hall, a cathedral of marble bones. The floor was inscribed with thousands of runes, long dead but faintly glowing under their feet. In the center lay a stone altar, cracked but still marked with old blood. Lysandra reached out to trace it, her fingertips trembling. "My mother came here before she died," she whispered. "She told me the covenant was a gift of balance, that it kept the worlds from devouring one another. Kane stepped closer, eyes narrowing. That's a lie. He pointed to the carvings on the wall, symbols depicting wolves and witches kneeling before a towering, faceless figure crowned in flame. He read the inscription aloud. The firstborn shall bleed beneath the blood moon. Their love shall seal the hunger of gods. Lysandra froze. The firstborn. Kane's jaw tightened. They sacrificed their children. Era's voice came soft, sorrowful. Not just children, their first loves. The moonborn and nightborn were once one people. The gods demanded division to balance the light and shadow, so they offered their most sacred bonds to feed the gods' hunger. Lysandra's throat went dry. So the gods were never balancing us. They were feeding. Kane's eyes flared with rage. And we've been feeding them ever since. He looked toward the altar, the blood runes glowing brighter now that both of them stood near. This is why our bond burns, he said, voice low, almost breaking. Because it isn't just love. It's a debt written in blood. Lysandra turned away, tears glinting. All this time I thought killing you would end the curse, but it would only complete it. Kane's hand closed around her wrist, firm but trembling. If one of us dies, the gods feast again. Their eyes locked, realization crashing through them both like thunder. If they loved, the world might end. If they resisted, they would die. There was no winning, only choosing which kind of ruin they would live for. The air trembled. The blood moon's light bled through the cracks in the roof, pouring onto the altar like liquid flame. The world tilted. Lysandra gasped as her vision blurred, the ruins dissolving around her. Suddenly, she stood in a void of red light. The floor beneath her was endless glass reflecting moons upon moons. A voice called her name. Lysandra. Kane stood before her, but his eyes were not his own. They burned with the harrowed god's light. His expression was hollow, inhuman. She tried to step back, but the floor melted into blood. You see now, the voice through him said. The bond was not meant for mercy. The devourer and the light-bearer exist for one purpose, to sustain us. Love was the bait. Death is the offering. No, she cried. We'll end you. You cannot end what birthed you, the god hissed. One must die for the world to live. The bloodline demands it. Kane raised his hand, shadow claws glinting. Lysandra tried to run, but the bond pulled her back, dragging her toward him. His body trembled, fighting it, fighting himself. Lysandra, he whispered through clenched teeth, his real voice breaking through the gods. It's not me. I can't. His claws brushed her throat, her vision filled with stars and moonlight. And then she saw it. Her own death. Not as prophecy, but as memory yet to happen. His hand at her throat, her lips whispering his name, and the blood moon weeping above them both. She screamed, and the vision shattered. She fell to her knees in the ruins, gasping. Kane was beside her, shaking, eyes wide with horror. What did you see? He demanded. Her voice trembled. The end. You killing me. He recoiled like she had struck him. No, I would rather burn. The gods won't give us a choice, she said softly. He turned away, fists clenching. Then we'll make our own. The moon's light flickered across his face, half in shadow, half in sorrow. Lysandra rose, stepping beside him, close enough for their marks to pulse together again. Then whatever happens next, she said, it happens on our terms, not theirs. Kane met her gaze. And though his eyes burned with fury, there was something else behind it. Love, fear, defiance. They stood together before the altar, two souls cursed to end each other, daring to rewrite the fate of gods. Outside, the blood moon trembled, and the air hummed like the edge of a scream. That night, as Lysandra finally fell into uneasy sleep, the vision returned, clearer this time. her blood on Kane's hands, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Forgive me, Witchfire." And when she woke, his mark was glowing again. Bright as if the gods themselves were watching, the night split open like a wound. From the horizon to the heavens, the blood moon cracked in two, a blinding scar of red and silver bleeding across the sky. The sound was not thunder, but screaming light, the wail of gods awakening from slumber. Lysandra stood on the temple's edge, the wind tearing through her cloak, watching the heavens fracture. She felt it, the fabric between realms thinning, unraveling like a torn veil. The Witchlands trembled beneath her feet, rivers of light spilling across the soil, burning symbols into the earth. And from beyond the rift, darkness poured, legions of night-born soldiers, their eyes silver and merciless, riding beasts made of shadow and bone. At their front stood Thorn, Kane's second, his expression carved from betrayal. He raised the banner of Dravenmere high, shouting words that turned the air to iron. The Devourer has fallen to witchcraft. The Nightborn fight for purity. The Lightbearer dies tonight. Lysandra felt her pulse crash in her throat. He's coming for me, she thought, and then she felt him. Kane. The bond burned like molten silver through her veins, raw and desperate. From the far ridge under the broken moon he emerged, alone. His armor was scorched black, his blade pulsing with runes that moved like veins beneath his skin. His eyes were no longer fully human. Silver flames burned within them, reflecting both fury and grief. When he spoke, his voice carried across the battlefield like the toll of a god's bell. "Thorn," he said, low and steady. "Step aside." But Thorn only sneered. "You've doomed us all for a witch's touch." The Nightborn army roared in approval, the sound rippling through the earth like thunder. Behind Lysandra, the witches rose in shimmering formation, circles of moonlight and flame. Two ancient worlds faced each other again, their fates twisted together by an old curse and a doomed love. The moment the moon's halves aligned again, a scream of energy burst across the battlefield. The blood war began. Magic and shadow collided like colliding stars. Witchfire met wolfsteel. Lightning split through the fog of war. The ground itself bled light. Lysandra summoned walls of silver flame, pushing back the Nightborn riders. Her hands burned with power, but her focus wasn't on them. It was on him. Kane tore through soldiers like a storm incarnate, but he wasn't striking to kill. He was searching, always looking toward her through chaos. Then he saw Thorn cutting through the witch's flank, heading straight for Lysandra. And the curse reacted. Kane's body convulsed. His breath hitched. His mark, the black wolf on his chest, burst into flames. Lysandra turned in time to see his eyes turn pure silver, his pupils gone. The air warped around him as his bones shifted, his form unraveling into something ancient, something divine and monstrous. The transformation was agony. He fell to his knees, the sound of tearing flesh and cracking bone echoing through the storm. When he rose again, Kane was no longer man. The Devourer had awakened, half shadow, half man. His body towered, his limbs cloaked in dark fire that bled moonlight. His face was still partly his own, but his mouth held the fangs of the beast god who cursed him. The earth bowed beneath his feet, every Nightborn soldier trembling at the sight. Lysandra whispered his name, once softly, and the beast turned. For a moment she saw recognition flicker in his monstrous eyes. Then he moved. With one sweeping motion he hurled Thorn from his horse, claws rending steel and shadow alike. Thorn's sword shattered. His body hit the ground with a sound like breaking glass. "Kane!" Lysandra screamed over the roar of fire and thunder. "Stop! Don't lose yourself!" The Devourer snarled, his voice layered with two tones, one his, one not. "He is gone," the god within him hissed. "Only hunger remains." But then, through the divine rage, he froze. Lysandra had stepped closer unarmed, her hand raised, her moonlight touching his chest. "No," she said. "You're still here." Her light met his darkness. The battlefield stilled. The armies watched as the witch faced the beast that could end the world, not with fear, but with tenderness. The glow of their marks fused, silver and black intertwining, bleeding into each other. The god within Kane screamed. The devourer recoiled, shaking his head violently, trying to tear free from her touch. "Lysandra, go," he managed to choke out, half human again for a heartbeat. "If I stay, I'll destroy everything." She didn't move. "Then let me burn with you." And the moon exploded. From the heavens, a torrent of moonfire rained down, liquid silver flames pure and consuming. The battlefield vanished beneath a sea of light. Screams of men and witches alike were swallowed by silence. Kane looked up at the burning sky, and for the first time, he understood what the prophecy truly meant. The devourer and the light-bearer shall love and end the world. He turned to her one last time. "If ending the world means losing you," he said, voice shaking, "then let it end." Lysandra reached for him, tears cutting through the ash on her cheeks. "Kane, don't—" But it was too late. He stepped into the moonfire. The flames devoured him completely, not in pain, but in purpose. His shadow stretched across the field, enormous, godlike, before dissolving into light. The ground stopped trembling. The battle halted. Every wolf and witch felt the bond sever in their bones. When the light faded, nothing of Kane remained, except for the mark now glowing on Lysandra's palm, black and silver entwined. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and then stilled. The moon hung half whole, half shattered. The sky was silent again. Lysandra fell to her knees amid the ruin, moonfire drifting around her like dying stars. The witches knelt behind her in stunned reverence. The Nightborn warriors dropped their weapons, hollow and silent. Era's voice came faintly on the wind. The devourer chose love over hunger. Perhaps the gods are not so eternal after all. Lysandra looked at her palm, the mark still warm. She closed her fingers around it and whispered, "He's not gone." And for a fleeting second, the air shifted. The faintest brush of shadow passed behind her, as though someone unseen had lingered just long enough to touch her cheek. Then the world went still once more. That night, under the half-shattered moon, Lysandra dreamed again. She stood in a field of ashes, the world quiet, and from the fading light, a voice whispered, deep, rough, achingly familiar, "Witchfire. When the moon is whole again, I'll return." Her eyes opened, the mark on her palm still glowing softly, pulsing like a living thing. The war had ended, but the prophecy was far from over. The sky had forgotten how to breathe. For 3 nights after the blood war ended, the moon hung shattered over the world, one half burning red, the other pale as grief. The Witchlands smoldered beneath it, rivers of molten light cutting through what was once sacred ground. Every tree whispered with dying voices. Every breeze carried ash. Lysandra stood alone at the center of the ruin, her cloak torn, her eyes hollow but unbroken. The mark on her palm, Kane's mark, still pulsed softly, a ghostly heartbeat against her skin. Each throb felt like a distant echo of his voice, calling from beyond the veil. Around her, the survivors whispered her name like a prayer and a curse. She ended the war. She doomed us all. She carries the devourer's heart. But Lysandra heard none of them. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the moon fire had consumed him, where he had chosen love over eternity. On the dawn of the 4th day, the heavens wept. Rain fell, silver, luminous and sharp as tears. Every drop hissed when it touched the scorched earth, filling the air with ghostly steam. The witches called it the moon's lament, believing the goddess mourned the fall of her son. But Lysandra knew better. The moon wasn't crying for the gods. It was crying for him. She knelt, pressing her fingers into the ashen soil where Kane had vanished. You said you'd return, she whispered. When the moon is whole again. Her power flared. The earth beneath her cracked, light seeping from the wounds. Pain turned to energy, grief to wrath. The mark on her palm bled silver light, spiraling up her arm in veins of flame. Era and the surviving coven approached cautiously from behind. Lysandra, Era murmured, your magic is feeding on your sorrow. You'll destroy yourself. Then let it, Lysandra said without turning. Her voice was quiet, but it vibrated with divine weight. If the gods want blood, I'll give them mine, but not before I take theirs. The witches exchanged fearful glances. Lysandra's hair floated around her as if the air itself had bent to her will. Her eyes glowed like twin moons, and for a moment her silhouette shimmered, half woman, half celestial flame. The bond had not ended. It had evolved. That night, when the sky darkened to violet and the moon hung bleeding, a voice spoke, not from the air but from within her soul. Witchfire. Lysandra froze. The voice wasn't Kane's. It was deeper, ancient, the one that had cursed them both. You defied my design, the god's voice thundered inside her. You meddled with divine hunger. The devourer was mine, not yours. Her laughter broke like glass. You made him a monster, she shouted into the void. You took his will, his soul, his light. He was born from my shadow, the god hissed. He was never meant to love. You broke the law that binds creation. Now the world unravels. Lightning split the heavens. The ground trembled beneath her bare feet, but Lysandra did not flinch. Then let it unravel, she said. Let your law die with your cruelty. And she raised her hands to the heavens, the runes of the old world, the same ones etched into the covenant stone deep beneath Moonspire, ignited in answer. Every mark, every sigil forged by blood and betrayal began to glow. The witches watched in awe as Lysandra's body became a conduit of moonlight. Her grief had turned to divinity. Her heart was a furnace of celestial fire. She spoke the words no mortal should know, the language of the first witches, the syllables of creation. Each word tore at the sky. Each breath bent the laws of gods. The harrowed god roared. You cannot break what was forged in sacrifice. Lysandra's eyes burned brighter. I can, she said, because love was never part of your design. She drew her blade, Kane's black steel dagger, still engraved with his name, and plunged it into the air before her. The world shuddered. From the wound in reality, the covenant bled light. Runes shattered. The heavens screamed. Every altar built in the god's name cracked and fell, and the moon, that wounded witness, began to mend. Its two halves trembled, drawn together by the force of her defiance. The light around her grew unbearable. Her cloak dissolved into stardust. Her hair lifted like a halo of fire. She felt Kane in every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse of the broken mark. Come back to me, she whispered into the collapsing sky. Come back. The explosion was silent, pure light consuming everything, reshaping the air itself. When it faded, the witches fell to their knees, shielding their eyes. The battlefield was gone. The ruins of Moonspire were gone. In their place stood a single figure, suspended above the earth, her feet no longer touching the ground. Lysandra had become part of the moon. Her skin shimmered like pale starlight. Her eyes were endless and hollow, reflecting the heavens themselves. She was no longer merely human, nor fully divine. Ira whispered through tears. She's become what he was meant to be. The god's whispers filled the wind, furious and fading. The harrowed god's voice trembled, losing power with every word. You have undone the balance. You have condemned creation. But Lysandra's voice, and calm, clear, cut through it. No, I freed it. And with that, the covenant shattered completely, its pieces raining down as shards of crystal that melted into the soil. The light receded. Silence fell. The moon, now whole again, glowed with impossible clarity, no longer bleeding, but luminous and serene. Lysandra stood amid the ashes, her breath soft and steady. The bond mark on her palm flickered faintly. She lifted her hand toward the moonlight, and for the first time since the war it pulsed strong. Then, a voice. Soft at first, like the echo of memory. Then clearer, rough, deep, achingly familiar. "You broke it, Witchfire." Lysandra froze. The air thickened with warmth. The moonlight bent around her like an embrace. "Now bring me home." Her lips parted. Her heart, which had been still for days, surged to life. "Kane?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The light flickered again, forming a faint silhouette in the air. Tall, shadow-edged, a hand reaching toward her. The mark on her palm glowed until it hurt. She could feel him again. Not memory, not echo. Presence. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered back, "Then wait for me." The wind carried her words upward, vanishing into the newly whole moon. When dawn came, the witches awoke to find Lysandra gone. Only a ring of silver ash remained where she had stood, and above it, carved in light across the moon's surface, was a single rune: Kane. The world breathed again. For the first time in a century, the air was still. No storms, no screams, no divine thunder cracking the sky. The moon hung whole and ghostly above the horizon, washed in faint red like a scar that refused to fade. In the forest below, dew shimmered on every leaf, feeding the earth reborn. But beneath that peace, the ground trembled softly, the heartbeat of something ancient reawakening. And then he breathed. Kane opened his eyes beneath the shattered arch of Moonspire Temple. The light seared them. For a long moment, he didn't move. The taste of ash and iron filled his mouth. But there was air. He was alive, mortal. His pulse was uneven, struggling, but real. The hunger that once ruled him was gone. The beast within him had gone silent. He looked down at his hands, scarred, human, trembling, and laughed under his breath. The sound cracked, weak, disbelieving. He remembered her voice. "You broke it, Witchfire. Now bring me home." And she had. Days bled into one another as Kane walked the scarred lands. The world was healing, but it did not forget. Forests sprouted from ash. Rivers bled silver under moonlight. The air hummed with broken magic. Everywhere he went, whispers followed. The devourer lives again. The curse is broken. The witch became the moon. He ignored them all. His path was fixed, north, always north, following the pull in his blood. Every night the moon followed him like an eye that refused to blink. He didn't need to wonder if she still existed. He felt her. Sometimes in dreams he saw her, standing upon the edge of the heavens, light spilling from her hair, her eyes full of sorrow and endless longing. And always, always, she reached for him, but her fingers dissolved into light before she could touch him. By the time he reached the northern cliffs, the sky had turned the color of dying embers. The final eclipse had begun, the devouring moon's last breath before fading back into legend. The ocean below churned with moonfire, waves glowing faintly red as though reflecting the blood of gods. Kane stood at the edge, breathing hard, his mortal body weak from the journey. And then, he heard it. A whisper carried on the wind, not from the world, but from above. "Kane." Her voice. He raised his head. The moon was lowering, larger than it had ever been, its light cascading over the cliffs like liquid flame. And from that light, she descended, Lysandra, not as flesh and blood, but as radiant form, half spirit, half divine. Her feet barely touched the ground, her eyes luminous and soft with unspoken love. For a heartbeat, Kane forgot to breathe. She was more beautiful and more terrible than any goddess. And yet, in her gaze, he saw the same woman who had once stood against him with a trembling dagger, the woman who had saved him from himself. She came closer, her hand hovering before his chest. The mark, the twin bond sigil, flared faintly on her palm, glowing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would." His voice was rough, mortal, fragile, but steady. "You kept your promise." Lysandra smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered with grief. "You're human again." He nodded. "And you're not." Silence stretched between them, a silence thick with everything unsaid, with memories of war and flame, of love born in ruin, of kisses stolen between worlds. Then, softly, she said, "You shouldn't have come back for me." He took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "I didn't. I came back because of you." Her breath hitched. For a moment the bond pulsed like it once had, two hearts beating in defiance of fate. But the rhythm faltered. The light around her flickered. Her time was fading. The truth beneath the moon. "The curse is broken," he said, searching her face. "We're free now." Her smile trembled. "No, Kane, you are." "What are you saying?" She turned her gaze toward the sky. The magic that held the curse. It needed balance. "When I broke the covenant, I bound myself to what was left of the moon's essence. I can't remain here much longer." His throat tightened. "Then I'll find a way. I'll call to the gods." She shook her head gently. "The gods are gone. I ended them too." Her voice softened. "All that remains is us, and even that balance will fade." He took a step forward, his hands trembling as he cupped her face. "Then let it fade," he whispered. "Let the world end. I've already lost it once." Tears welled in her eyes, tears of light. "If we defy it again, Kane, the world will burn anew. The gods may be gone, but their hunger remains in the roots of creation." His jaw tightened. "Then let them starve." She laughed, a small broken sound, and touched her forehead to his. "You were always the fool who'd fight heaven itself for love. And you were always the light that made it worth it." The moonlight dimmed. The blood-red edge swallowed its glow, signaling the eclipse's end. The world hushed, as if holding its breath for what came next. Lysandra's body flickered, fading between light and shadow. "My time is done," she whispered. He gripped her hands, desperate, refusing to let go. "Then take me with you." Her smile was soft, aching, eternal. "You already belong to me." And before he could speak, she leaned in, her lips finding his under the dying moonlight. The kiss was slow, endless, alive with the heartbeat of everything they'd fought for. In that moment, the world held still. The forests, the rivers, even the stars above, and all seemed to kneel before their union. The moonlight pulsed one final time, flooding the cliffs in red fire. Their silhouettes fused in the glow, man and goddess, love and ruin, shadow and flame, before the light burst outward, blinding. When it faded, Kane stood alone. She was gone,